The old song goes like this: what the world needs now is love, sweet love. And don't worry, I'm not going to sing it for you. But that old song, while it sounds great, doesn't go into all the things that really are needed right now. Because if that song was written back when men actually knew what they needed to do. Today, it's not the case. And we have a couple generations of men who are really wondering what it means to be a man. What we need right now is to make sure that we get men to understand what they need to do in order to rebalance society and get a revival of manhood. You see, back in the 60s, militant feminism arose. And by the 70s, the very idea of opening a door for a woman was considered insulting. By the 90s, it got to the point where sex in between a man and a woman, and even the sex in marriage, was considered akin to rape. By the 20 teens, we were talking about toxic masculinity and male feminism. And now, in the 2020s, we're talking about transgenderism and the idea that men are trying to become women by cutting off their genitals and listening to lies like that. Is it any wonder why men have withdrawn themselves from society? They are not going to college like they used to. They're staying home, often in their parents' basements, watching porn on their computers or anime or gaming. That's not the way to live. And what's missing, really, is what it means to be a man. No one really has come out and said, this is what a man should do. So we're going to do that right now. The one I found most helpful is one are 4 points that have come out by a gentleman by the name of Robert Lewis. And they are that a real man rejects passivity, accepts responsibility, leads courageously, seeks the greater reward, which is God's reward. And we'll go over each one here in a moment. But these four together should give any man a very good definition to work from. So let's talk about it. Passivity is the bane of a man's existence. It is so easy, and so many men get into the habit of not doing things. They get lazy. They procrastinate. And I know I am one who I have to work at not procrastinating. A real man needs to reject passivity and to do things. He can't just sit around and let others do it for him. He needs to be active. Now, what kind of activity? Just being active for the sake of being active, well, that's good. That means you're not being a couch potato. But are you really being a man by just being active? Because I could be active by fishing every day. I could be active by going out and running marathons. I can be very active doing all sorts of things, but am I accepting responsibility? If I want to have a family, if I have a family, if I want to be a contributing member of society, I need to take responsibility. I need to do what is right. I need to provide and protect my family. That's what a man is supposed to do. That's a man's role. Now, a woman can provide and protect to a certain point. But if a woman is the only provider and only protector, that woman is going to feel totally out of place. It's not going to feel right. That's the man's job. The woman is there to do other things. God created us equally. He also created us differently. And that difference is men are larger. We are physically stronger. We are expected to protect. That is in our nature. And a man who takes responsibility is living up to what he needs to do. He also if he is active and he's taking responsibility, he also will be asked to lead. Because remember, I said not every man is going to be active and take responsibility. It's only a real man who does that. So real men will be asked to lead. Now, whether that means you're leading in a small area or a large area, if that means you're leading by example, by just being a good example for others, or you're taking a much more public role, whether that leading happens all the time or it happens just as needed, it doesn't matter. A real man is ready to take on the mantle of leadership when it is necessary. And even more importantly, you have to be able to lead courageously, because you have to overcome the fear of being rejected, the fear of failure, and the fear of getting hurt. That's what it means by leading courageously. So when you take rejecting passivity, accepting responsibility, leading courageously, all those are great. But if you don't have the idea of looking forward and looking up to where you are going to the reward that you are heading towards, then you're not really going anywhere. See, the idea of expecting the greater reward, seeking the greater reward, is that we are striving towards something. And the best thing to strive towards is the reward that God has for us, because he has the best plan. His plan is for us to be with him for eternity. And that's an awesome plan. So how do we get there? Well, that's for another video. But if you are working towards what God wants you to do, and what God wants you to do is going to be different than what God wants me to do specifically. But if you're working towards what he wants you to do, and you keeping your head up, your eyes forward, and moving down the road, that's a great thing. Because now you're not being passive. Now you're accepting responsibility, because God expects you to be responsible for things, and you're going to be leading courageously, because other people are going to look at you and follow you, because you're going with a purpose. You're going with a good purpose, and people will come to you because they see that you have something that they want. You have confidence. You will be a man. And that's a great thing. That's a wonderful thing. You see, society is yearning for men to become real men. And like I said before, God created men and women to be equal in his eyes, but he created them differently. Women have things they can do far better than men, and men have things that they can do that they can do much more easily than women. But the two of them need to come together and work towards the future. And part of that is having kids and leading those kids into a life where they can have kids. And all of these people, all you and your progeny, looking towards God, towards his plan, to the future. You see, without that, we get out of balance. And when men abdicate their responsibility and become lazy, we get lawlessness. And think for a minute, how are we doing now? Do you see a lot of lawlessness? Because we have a lot of lazy men out there. Because we have denigrated men. No, we start picking men up, raising them up, expecting them to not be passive, expecting them to accept responsibility, expecting them to be leaders, courageous leaders, and expecting them to follow for the greater good, for what God has intended for them. Then we will see a revival in society like we've never seen before.